from Senegal. The incident involving the New York City Gracie Mansion, those were two teenagers whose parents were both naturalized from Afghanistan and Turkey, respectively. And then we have the Old Dominion shooter, who was from Sierra Leone. And then we have the Temple Israel issue in Michigan, and that individual is from Lebanon. Who are we letting into our country? And this is why we need DHS to be funded as soon as possible. These individuals should not be here. Being a U.S. citizen is a privilege. It is not a right. And if you are not going to honor that right and treat people with respect, and you are going to hurt American citizens, you must be removed from our country immediately.
Immediately.
You know, Paul, let me go to you first to comment on Old Dominion. 7 years in prison, involvement with ISIS, why this person was ever let out, the ramming incident at the synagogue in Michigan. Now, I got to say something. Thank God they had security measures in place. Thank God the FBI had actually done training at that very synagogue about 6 weeks earlier.
That's right.
It certainly helped, and the courage of this one security guard. I know he's injured tonight. Our prayers are with him, but God knows how many lives could have been saved here.
Amen.
And apparently incendiary devices associated with the car. But I'm finding all of it troubling in as much as, well, we did report that people that are sympathetic towards Iran, those have been either radicalized in this country or known terrorists in the country. Are we going to have to wait and expect more of these incidents to occur?
Right, Sean. So let's go to the synagogue attack. First of all, let's recognize, much like what happened in New York, we were extremely lucky. The reporting is that there were a number of explosive devices in the car. And in light of the smoke that you see coming out of the building, which is where the car penetrated to, we're very lucky that there wasn't some kind of a detonation while children were still there, which is, I'm sure, what his ultimate motivation here was. Let's recognize also that the intelligence that the FBI used to warn locations that are sensitive, as we say in the business, sensitive locations, to harden those targets, including Jewish locations, as we've seen in, let's say, Washington, D.C., at the museum attack. They put that information out, but they also acted on it. They didn't just say, hey, here's the bad news. They have a program where they get with locals, they talk to the sensitive location, they help them harden that target. I know people who I worked with who are now involved in those programs. So while this is a terrible...
You deal with the situation just like you deal with your automobile. You do preventive maintenance to keep something major from happening. It's the same way with terrorism.
September 11th, the closer we get to September 10th. And we're in a situation right now where I think we're getting those reminders. And law enforcement, along with the FBI...
Not only September, but then you got Mount Carmel, Waco, and on the same date of Oklahoma, the Oklahoma bombing. I mean, there are certain dates that click in certain people's minds that mean a great deal.
Not if, and I pray to God that
and I just pray to God that come the celebration of the 4th, pertaining to our 250-year celebration, that they're not plotting and planning on something big on that. Because odds are they probably are.
Before I left the FBI,
these people are nuts. They are mean. They are cruel, and they're out to take the American people out.
Schools, Boca Raton, there was a high school. We went in, we did the training in real life. You're in the hallways, you're dealing with high stress situations, and that's what you do. The time to prepare is in advance.
Absolutely.
You've got to have that muscle memory ready to go so that when the incident occurs in real life, it's literally, you don't even have to think about it.
Step 1, 2, and 3.
Because you're in those high stress situations, you've got to be ready to go.
That's right.
So the planning and the training does work, and this today is a manifestation of that. The FBI had worked with with that actual synagogue.
Good job.
And with individuals, and they've gone through it with law enforcement,
that's
with first responders,
that's right.
And that is what we do. And today is a
payoff.
Effort,
it's a payoff.
And I'm so grateful for the courage of those heroes that acted swiftly and quickly. The teachers that had the...
We had other situations too in school shootings up here in Nashville. We had other situations that's happened. I mean, you can use the example of what not to be towards what went on in Texas. That's what you don't want to do. Pertaining to standing outside while you hear gunfire going off or the ordeal that happened down in Orlando, Florida. Those are events that you don't want to do. You use these type of events for the things that you are trained to do and you want to do in case of an aggressive attacker.
Don't know what's going on. Keep your eyes and
We are at war, my friends. Wake up.
have a plan in place for you and your family members and loved ones. If something happens, always remember, run, hide, fight.
Run, hide, fight. Kind of like if you get caught on fire, what do? You fall down, you roll, etc. You know, there's different metaphors that you usually, if you follow, they'll pretty well stay in line towards the best defense.
Years is outrageous. Getting out after 7 is outrageous, but let's recognize something. He was very clearly still radicalized. Who paroled him? There was supposed to be 5 years supervised release.
There you go.
What was the conditions there of that release? Who was doing the supervision?
There you go.
And was there any information coming out of prison that indicated that he was still radicalized? These are all things you have to be very honest with yourself.
That's up to the probation officer board.
I don't know if you buy into convert or die, do you ever really give that up? And how would you ever know? Anyway, Nicole, thank you. Paul, thank you. And coming up tonight, Operation Epic Fury continues.
Well, I think you would know, first of all, if you're a true born-again Christian, you should be able to sense or feel the difference pertaining to basically a clash there of whether or not this person has truly been humbled to the degree that they're sincere in what they're doing and how they're doing it. I don't think you have to be an Einstein to be able to sit and feel somebody out, to hear what they got to say and hear the points of what they're touching off on to determine whether or not they're either for or against or etc.
Well, you know what, Tom? I know some pretty decent bros out there. If you're one of those fans who thinks those videos are super cool, you're a pathetic excuse for a loser. Peter, David, Tom, thank you all for starting me off tonight. Coming up later in the show, the department in charge of making sure our homeland is safe has not been fully funded in almost a month, and the timing could not be worse. Miles Taylor is here to explain to us why. But first, right after the break, it's time for Money Power Politics. With traffic drying up in the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to look at the long-term economic damage it could create for us here at home and for the rest of the world. The 11th hour is having a serious night, and you do not want to miss a minute.
It ain't a matter of if things is going to be changed or conformed pertaining to the war and as far as what's going on with stopping flow in the canal there. It's a matter of how bad. It's a matter of how bad. I mean, it's kind of like on the same level whenever China made a determination that should have made a determination probably within 2 weeks before they ever made their determination that COVID was sure enough bad. And rather than them send a boat to America that had already made preparations in medical supplies, basically they turned the boat around and took their medical supplies, even though we had made agreements in a legal transaction. They turned the boat around and took it back to them. You know why? Because they were smart enough to identify, oh wow, we're going to need this probably as much, if not more, than what everybody else is. So your priorities change because you identify the danger. You identify the risks. You identify what's going on currently, not what happened last week, last month, last year, or even 10 years ago. Now, basically, you can take what happened last week, last month, last year, and 10 years ago, and 20 years ago, and you can take those dates and you can correlate them together, indicating that usually there's people that are triggered off of stuff like that. You got basically maniacs that's trying to make a very, very pathetic, powerful statement, kind of like what Timothy McVeigh done, him and Nichols, on the very date of the incident that happened down in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, which was not an appropriate way to deal with the truth. You know how you deal with the truth? You bring it out before the public and you discuss it. You debate it. You look at all the angles. You determine in who was right, who was wrong. That way you don't make the same mistakes again. And most definitely, the federal government made lots of mistakes down there in not only the school shooting that happened just within the past 3 or 4 years, but also with what happened with the Mount Carmel Waco incident that costed the lives of so many more people. Because of a bunch of knotheads that wanted to showboat the situation in training a bunch of people how to turn regular guns into semi-automatic guns, and then rather than do a normal shakedown, they had to go for the gold. They wanted to make a big showing, even though they knowed that their plans had been spoiled. Come on! Once more, there are certain incidences that law enforcement needs to use in towards what not to do, just like this incident that recently happened, and what they should do as far as training, as far as proper preventative maintenance. The same thing as you would do on your teeth, the same thing that you would do on your automobile, the same thing that you do on your health. Especially when it comes to children. Especially whenever it comes to children or even elderly people that can't defend for themselves. My God.
Talk with money, power, politics. And investors are no longer bracing for the worst case scenario in Iran. They're in it. The International Energy Agency warned today that the war has caused, quote, the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. President Trump has said that the U.S. Navy would escort oil tankers if needed and that the conflict will be over soon. But his advisors have dialed back those promises big time. Watch this.
I'm sure.
My belief that as soon as it is militarily possible, the U.S. Navy, and perhaps with an international coalition, will be escorting vessels through.
It'll happen relatively soon, but it can't happen now. We're simply not ready, but it is short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Why wasn't that already thought out before they ever attacked them people over there? Of what kind of economical catastrophe this was going to turn into be.
Who I have not seen in years, and you are lucky he's with us tonight. Founder of the Energy Word. He has
Bad
more than
leadership.
25 years experience on the floor of the New York Mercantile Exchange.
Poor
trading
leadership.
energy futures, and has written multiple books on the energy markets. Ron, we are nearly 2 weeks into this conflict. There's no clear end in sight for this war and no clear path for reopening the strait. Where does that leave the U.S.? I know the whole investment community is saying this war is over. People inside the Trump administration are whispering to Wall Street, we're leaving, we're leaving, we're leaving. Easier said than done.
Yeah, well, Iran's not leaving. I mean, as Tom Nichols was saying earlier, the enemy has a voice and can make decisions here. You know, for all the talk of sanctions,
a force to
relief,
reckon with.
Secretary Bessent put out today, oil's up 35 cents above $96 a barrel tonight. So the issue, in my mind, Steph, is whether we leave or not, oil prices are likely to trend higher because Iran may very well continue to attack oil fields, keep the Strait of Hormuz closed.
They may.
As we
They
saw
may.
even, tonight, one missile may have
No.
entered Turkish airspace.
No.
Which
They will.
changes the calculus,
They
at least
will.
to a certain extent of some of this. So it may be over in the minds of some, but it may not be over in the minds of others.
A former U.S. diplomat and energy
It won't be
department
over
official
in the
told
minds
New
of
York
others.
Times, I want to get the quote right. This really is the big one.
Watch
It is
this.
the emergency scenario everyone feared. First, do you agree with that? And second, is the world prepared?
I think the world is prepared. Well, the thing, I couldn't agree with Ron more. I think that the issue is not whether Trump leaves Iran. I think he'll leave Iran as soon as the pumps at the corner reach $4.50 a gallon. And he's very sensitive about gas prices. And as soon as they get there,
Are they getting there?
Oh, they'll definitely get there. This is not the kind of trade that goes away overnight. Remember, there's 100 million barrels of oil that hasn't gotten out of the Gulf that's supposed to hit a refinery in the next 2.5 weeks. Now, if that doesn't hit the refinery, that lack of oil is going to mean a lack of gas that's going to be immediate. Right now, we see gas at $3.50. That's mostly on speculation. But the real supply crunch comes when all those barrels don't reach the refineries that they're intended to reach. And that happens in
And
about a week.
Iran knows it. And they know it. They know this.
Next week, do we still hit those high prices?
Yes, we do. But even worse than that is that I don't think because we walk away next week, like Ron says, that the Iranians give up on the Straits of Hormuz. I've been trading oil since, 3 years after 1982, since the Shah came out of power in 79. I've been there for that long. And in all that
79?
time, it was a red line for the entire global oil community that you did not close the Straits of Hormuz with the Russians, with the Chinese, with everybody, with the rest of the Arab world. And they've never used it before in the past. But what Trump has done has given the Iranians a permission structure to get back at Trump in the only way and with the only tools that they have at their disposal.
Now, one thing I can say about Trump is that they went for South America first, Yugoslavia, in trying to restructure their productivity issues down there first. I will say that was a good move. That was a smart move.
The master tonight. The energy crisis is also triggering an uptick in mortgage rates in the U.S. Can you explain what's going on?
Sure. So in the bond market, where interest rates go up amid inflation concerns with oil prices and then by extension gasoline prices, diesel fuel, heating oil, jet fuel all go up in price, that puts upward pressure on consumer prices, on wholesale inflation rates. And so the bond market is beginning to reflect that more.
This could get real serious real quick.
Have the yield on the 10-year note now at 4.25%. That's pushed mortgage rates back above 6%, and so that
back above 6%. Whoa!
Really, buyers of homes
Whoa.
have been reticent to cross that line when we go above 6%. When it comes under 6%, you see a little refinancing activity. You see some more interest in buying homes. When it goes back above, it starts to fall off again. So it's kind of the red line for home buyers, just like 450 may be the red line in gasoline prices.
That's
Secretary
right.
Bessent said that the Navy may be an international coalition. They're going to be escorting vehicles when it's military possible. You're obviously laughing at this. Do you think? Do you think that's even possible? Will it take weeks or months? Does our economy have time? Do you buy this? Because I remind our audience, 2 days ago, the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, posted a video that turned out to be untrue, saying that the Navy was already escorting.
What they should have done, this is my opinion, they should have reenacted another oil pipeline, the same as they done out of Alaska, through the Middle East. Now, you can take it for what it's worth in doing whatever needs to be done. But I guarantee you, China would know. If China knows how to make floating islands, I guarantee you China would know how to go about making a floating pipeline. I don't know how that they would do it. It would have to be very, very flexible. It would have to have anchors. I mean, there'd be lots of stuff involved in doing it. But I guarantee if anybody could do it, it'd probably be China. Because they're amazing in what they can do architecturally wise.
Not going to provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government.
That's the most interesting part of this whole thing. It's the Russians who benefit the most. None of their oil is being blocked, so their supply is free to run. Everybody's dropping sanctions because they need the supply, and they're making an extra premium of about 50% on their oil per barrel every day, about $150 million extra per day on the oil they're selling right now.
And that's just right now. Wait until 2 weeks from now.
Allies with tariffs and threats left and right since the president took office the second time. And now we are looking for help to contain the fallout of the war that we chose to start. What is your take on this?
There'll be fallout.
Well, we're putting in those tariffs, Section 122, Section 301 tariffs, to replace the tariffs that the Supreme Court ruled were illegal just a few weeks ago. And yes, we're looking for international help after we said the British were not terribly helpful allies. They were upset about that. The French, I mean, obviously it's in Europe's interests to try to help, except it's very doubtful that they're going to lend a helping hand. And by the way, if we pull out, what naval escorts are we going to be using to get tankers through the Straits of Hormuz? I mean, there are so many, there's so
They're
much.
calculating if we pull out, Iran is going to say, "Oh, no worries, everybody go."
No,
but they've already proven this is their greatest leverage point.
Absolutely, and we don't really have anyone with substantial.
And our Pentagon people should have already known that before this decision was made.
Levied on Asian countries.
You're undermining the diplomatic skills
Absolutely.
of Steve Witkoff and Jared. Always good to see you. I'm so glad you came. I'm thrilled to see you tonight. Please come back soon. Unfortunately, you're not here with good news.
These people study this stuff. They just didn't float into this yesterday. They absolutely study this stuff. This is part of their livelihoods.
That means less resources and staffing shortages at critical agency that is supposed to be protecting us. We're going to get into it right after this.
It's a very, very serious message is what they're talking about regarding all this stuff right now. And this is only just the front end of this. You have to sit down and understand this. This is only the beginning of this. Just like the idiot that tried to kill them kids in that school or in that synagogue. This is just the beginning. I mean, just like, and I know it would probably have thrown Donald Trump's ambitions in basically people being on to him, but he should have put out a warning. The National Defense Services should have put out a warning by telling our people to load up and get out of there within 48 hours before bombs started ever blowing up stuff. The ordeal pertaining to what's going on right now with the cartel down in Mexico. Our people is in danger. There ain't no telling how many people has been caught unaware that right now don't know what they're going to do. Don't know if they should leave, try to leave, stay, bed down, hunker down. They're praying for their lives right now. Praying for their lives. This thing is being mismanaged so badly. And I understand going in with a wrecking ball or chainsaw and trying to straighten all this stuff out. But whenever I was saying back, I guess about a year ago, maybe a little less, 6 months ago, that what they're trying to do is going to create more problems, and it's going to create solutions to the problems. Now you're starting to see what I was talking about. Going at this with this approach, there's going to have consequences. You're dealing with radicals. You're dealing with people that basically have been taught all their lives that America is nothing but slum. They have been taught all their lives that we are the enemy. They have been taught that we're the infidel. They have been taught that if they can't convert us over to some of their ideologies, that basically they would be better off to kill us. And there's nothing in the Bible that says anything to that effect. As a matter of fact, the Bible says to be wise as serpents but harmless as doves. But whenever you're dealing with such a radicalness like this, then you got to go back to the basic standard, which is what? The only way for a good person to defeat a bad person with a gun is for the good person to have the gun. That's what you basically got to go down to, which is basically common sense survival tactics. And if you don't have common sense tactics, and if you can't warn your people ahead of time, if you can't prepare your people ahead of time in what you're fixing to get us all involved in, that's bad leadership. I mean, some of the things that Donald Trump has done, I supported 100%. And there's no doubt that evil dictator over there in Iran, as far as I'm concerned, should have been taken out probably give or take about 47 years ago. And that's one of the reasons why that the Pentagon has been so hesitant towards going in there in a strong arm approach, is because we knew what it would cause. So we had to walk around with gloves. We had to walk on eggshells with these people. But once more, look whose lives it's affecting. It's affecting not only the people in Israel, but it's affecting even their own people. It's affecting the whole Middle East. That ideology is nothing but a stronghold as far as a stumbling block to the whole region over there, the whole continent over there.
About possible sleeper cells, and the conflict has already exposed gaps in the U.S. counterterrorism efforts. It comes as lawmakers once again failed to pass funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which has been partially shut down for almost a month. Also today, 2 separate attacks that heightened concern. One on a Michigan synagogue, and the FBI said the shooting at Old Dominion University is being investigated as an act of terrorism. With us for more, Miles Taylor, former chief of staff for the Department of Homeland Security during the first Trump administration. Miles, I'm grateful you're...
And didn't they just have an incident in Austin, Texas, back about maybe a week ago? Uh-huh. They're saying that was terrorist inspired. There you go.
Many of our resources have been redeployed.
Massively.
This is no joke. This is no joke at all.
To focus on, Stephanie, is before the shutdown, before the United States went to war, before any of this was being talked about, the president had shifted substantial counterterrorism resources in the Department of Homeland Security away from counterterrorism, shifted them to deportations, shifted them to other efforts to support his immigration agenda. And that includes, Stephanie, people who are responsible for finding the needles in the haystack, and data analysts and intelligence personnel and cyber defenders, all sorts of folks. And remember, just months before the president launched this war, his top national security officials were on Capitol Hill saying the number one terrorist threat to the United States was not Iranian actors, it was Antifa. They said Antifa was the biggest terror threat to the United States, and whatever counterterrorism resources they were keeping on the field, they were directing against people who would otherwise be described as protesters and part of the political opposition. They have gone to war, Stephanie, with one hand tied behind their backs, even before the funding became an issue.
Then how worried are you about the DHS shutdown happening with the war going on?
Extremely. I mean, I'll put this into context because there's a lot of hyperbole flying around, but 20 years doing counterterrorism, this is my honest to goodness assessment, is we may well be facing the biggest sustained terror threat environment since 9/11.
Yep.
Iran is a very sophisticated terrorism actor. They may not have a conventional military to compete with the U.S. military, but on the terrorism front, these guys are the A-team of terrorism, and they have been for decades. That's why we should be worried. And the president, by all accounts, did not prepare for that. He did not ask DHS to prepare for that. He's effectively invited them to our doorstep, and he hasn't just looked the other way. As we know, Stephanie, he has, in some cases, his White House has suppressed some of the threat warnings because the president doesn't want to make it seem like the United States is in danger. Think of this like the Super Bowl. This would be like you went to the Super Bowl only with your offense. You didn't bring your defense to the game. You would never go to the Super Bowl without your defensive team. This is very, very serious. And right now, when we talk about the different functions, Stephanie, of DHS that are out of commission, it's key intelligence personnel. It's people who did the data analysis. It's the cybersecurity folks. It's the transportation security folks. It's the people responsible for countering weapons of mass destruction.
Absolutely.
Why does that matter, Stephanie? Well, 2 days ago, the president's own envoy to Iran, Steve Witkoff, said that they had enough ingredients to make 11 nuclear weapons. Now, we know that that would require a lot of work, but he said that same fissile material could be used to create a dirty bomb. We're talking about an adversary that's got weapons of mass destruction.
Exactly.
And the team responsible for detecting and thwarting those weapons of mass destruction, at least part of that team, is off the field right now. They're inaccessible because the president decided to take us to war before he got a funding deal at the Department of Homeland Security.
But of course, this
Got
isn't
caught
a
in
Super
front of the
Bowl.
horse.
This isn't a ball game. this is our homeland security. But let's talk about the airports, because
Endangering
TSA
our lives
employees
unnecessarily.
are about to miss their first full paycheck. Okay, not members of Congress, no one in the administration, TSA employees. And we are obviously seeing heightened frustration across airports in this country. Is that going to push lawmakers to do something here?
Got to.
So here's the nuance that people need to
It's got
understand:
to.
is it's not like when a department is shut down, no one can go to work. People can go to work; they can be accepted. They just can't be paid in most cases. So the department's
people
done
don't
all
want
it
to
can
do
at this
that.
point. Exactly. And so people.
So
don't
how do you
want-
pay your mortgages? How do you pay your rent? How do you pay your car payment? How do you keep up with your insurance? See? One thing affects another thing. It's a domino effect.
just to pay, and you start to get into a crunch. And this is why it's so reckless politicians keep doing this, why the White House keeps doing this, is that for a couple of weeks, you're dangling these people's livelihoods in front of them, and then pretty soon they can't afford to live anymore. I witnessed Donald Trump do this with a 35-day shutdown. It was devastating to families. And so what you're going to see at the airport, Stephanie, you're going to see chaos. People will stop showing up at work. They will call in sick. That will affect our security. That will affect the functioning of this economy.
Yeah, maybe they're going to stop.
And also the banks need to take their little chart pertaining to their credit score and lower that tremendously, because there's going to be so many people with so much messed up credit right now. If the banks are thinking that they're going to recover from this by still maintaining that same